Hello, good morning, and welcome to the final senior oral we have this week, highlighting the class of 2020. We're here to listen to Luke Glover, who is my senior assistant for Greek 1 this year. So Luke is going to talk to us today about service. The process is a little bit different than it normally is. This time, the audience is free to post questions and comments to encourage Luke, and he will see all of those eventually. And the second round of questions will be some of those questions. So let me encourage you to encourage Luke. Let's begin with a prayer, and then Luke will go ahead and start his thesis. Almighty God, we thank you for this senior class, and especially for Luke. May he find peace and comfort in this topic, and know that we are so thankful for his heart and appreciative that he is willing to share it with us today. Thank you so much for our MCA family and for bringing us together even in this way under these circumstances. For you are a good God, and you love us. And to thee we ascribe glory, honor, and worship. Amen.
Service is a principle that has been somewhat forgotten when it comes to our daily lives. And I think this is a travesty considering when someone does serve, they have the potential to gain several benefits for their well-being. Let me elaborate on this point for a minute. I personally discovered the importance and impact of service when I was forced to go to a camp for disabled children by my mother. After the first couple of days of me relentlessly resisting my mother's desire for me to participate, I finally gave into the pressure and started to actually put more effort into it. And to my surprise, I actually started to enjoy it. And even more incredibly, I felt like a happier and more confident person in general. I discovered that this is important in that I continued attending this camp for another 2 years and ended up getting a job. And throughout this process, I just enjoyed it. This simple experience changed me in ways that I would have never expected. And this is the purpose for my oral, and that I would hope that you would go and serve today so that you can feel the same things that I have. From this experience, I've come to believe that service is the true path to purpose, fulfillment, and joy in life. Service is a very complicated term, as it has different definitions and variations of its definitions, as well as most people have their own opinions on what service really means. I consider the base definition of service to be the Merriam-Webster definition of an act of assistance. In this definition, you could say that no matter what action a person does, they are serving someone, something, or themselves, because everything this person does has a purpose. For the purposes of this oral, I will be defining service as a lifestyle of giving your time to help others in need through love and living it out as if it's your purpose to do so. This is a definition of true service, biblical service. And as you can see, it's much broader than the simple Merriam-Webster definition. I've derived this definition from my own life experiences as well as the people that I interviewed. And to be more specific in my definition, if service is this true path to fulfillment, purpose, and joy in life, then we need to assume that the people who do this service are consciously aware of these three attributes. I believe that everybody can become a servant, and as they become a servant, fulfill their purpose. And I define purpose as a synonym to the Greek telos. And telos can be defined as an intent, end goal, or purpose. And this is how I've come to define purpose as our end goal in life. With this definition, I confidently believe a Christian's end goal is to serve. And to be more specific, I believe that it's our main purpose as Christians to bring others to Christ and bring them to heaven, as I also believe this to be an act of service. But before you can bring somebody to Christ, you need to find out who exactly this person is. And this is where I bring the point of, have you ever seen how many people are homeless on the street? Or have you ever noticed how many you pass by without even glancing at them in the fear that you might feel guilty from doing so? I addressed this dilemma with Mrs. Telshow, and we came to the conclusion that $1 is actually a pretty good alternative. Because as you give $1 out, it doesn't help people who don't really need it, like the people who want to use it for addictive purposes like drugs or alcohol, or maybe somebody who doesn't actually need the money and is just begging to beg. And if service is true to its definition, then this could be perhaps a example of how you can go and serve today and fulfill your purpose. Living this way brings purpose to those who can go out and serve the poor. And Mother Teresa puts this into a great example, saying that the fruit of my relationship with Jesus and me is the poor. Her service to the poor was through this her service to the poor was how she gained a connection with Christ. And I believe that this is another part as our purpose as Christians is to gain this servant relationship with Christ. For a clear explanation, I interviewed Mr. Jay Whitlow, who is a missionary pastor for Crescent Baptist Church, which I regularly attend. He brought out another example of how he was saying how when he serves, his relationship with the person that he is serving grows as well, making it easier to present the gospel and the biblical scriptures, and hopefully making it easier for them to go and serve, because he's providing this example. I believe that service is, once again, true to its definition. So I believe that this purpose in life is, once again, this servant relationship with Christ. And one point I would like to make here relates to the question of, can really everybody become a servant? What about the mentally ill or the people who are serial killers? If my definition relates to a love-based act, then I have to say that those people who are mentally ill in other severe ways, or who devalue human life, that they are significantly inefficient at being able to serve others and compared to those who can. For the purposes of this thesis, I'm speaking about people who have the ability to reason, as well as make choices and be consciously and physically aware of their actions. The Gospel of Mark relates that for even the Son of Man did not come down to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many. In my own service as the senior assistant for Greek 1 class, as well as my own experience in the Greek 1 and 2 classes, I discovered that the word meaning to serve in Greek is diakonesenai. And in this context of this verse, it is in the active voice, meaning that it is presently happening, but it is continuously happening. And when we use Christ as our prime example in life, you can see that it's quite obvious that we are meant to continually serve, and perhaps there's no end to our service. And I believe this because this is our true purpose in life. Considering everybody can pursue this purpose, I also believe that everybody can gain fulfillment from it. I have defined fulfillment as the feeling of positive difference. And once again, to gain a clearer explanation of this, I interviewed Dr. Bob Fu, who is he is a pastor and the president and founder of China Aid, as well as the author of God's Double Agent. And in our discussion, I wanted to find out why exactly he does what he does. And we came upon the topic and rabbit trail of a funeral. And from this, I linked it with Mr. Whitlow's interview. When I interviewed Mr. Whitlow, he described that he wanted to be remembered as a servant and gain fulfillment through it. And I value this point highly because when you put it among servants, it's somewhat highly agreed upon that they want to be remembered as such. In The Greatness Principle, the second book that I've read by Nelson Searcy, Mr. Searcy puts up the example of the creator of dynamite and the inventor of it, and his name is Alfred. And in this book, in the beginning of it, he tells the story of Alfred and how he was one time sitting down in a chair reading his brother's obituary because he just got back from his brother's funeral. And as he read it, something popped out of him that I'm sure he didn't expect. As he read it, he realized that his brother's name was replaced with his. So as he was reading it, it was like he was reading his own obituary. This had made him think about what all he had done with his life, and had created a new desire for him to actually want to be fulfilled in his life and make a positive difference. And so he went on to create dynamite in the hopes that he could scare people into peace, meaning that something so loud, so dangerous would scare people into creating conflict. Mr. Searcy points out that Alfred's original intent for the invention was that it would save lives. And from this point, I've come to believe that small towns, cities, states, and even countries have a hard time striving without people willing to help each other. The question must be posed if we are to continue that if we are on such a biblical basis of the definition of service, then why does Romans 12:7 say, if your gift is serving others, serve them well. If you're a teacher, teach well. One could say that this points out that service might not be for everybody, and in turn, making it not everybody's purpose. And in 11th grade at MCA, we take a class called Discovering Greatness. And in this class, we take personality tests to figure out our strengths and weaknesses when it comes to relationships. And there was a time that I might have agreed with this point because the varying personalities and people there, I had a hard time realizing that everybody could possibly become a servant from this. However, I put forward this verse, 1 Peter 4:10, which says, each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. This verse points out that no matter what gift you have been given, you can indeed go and use it to serve. And when you really think about it, what possible gift could somebody be given that they could not go and use to help others? For example, at MCA, we have these things called our T groups or round table groups. And through my experience at MCA, since I've been here my entire life, I've seen some great RT leaders and some not so great RT leaders. But the thing that ties them together is that they both have, even the bad ones, have used these skill sets and their strengths among relationships to go and serve their group and make their life a better experience at MCA. And maybe perhaps the simple experience of driving them to lunch a single day a week is a part of that gift. Finding fulfillment in service is something that all people are especially gifted to do, in my belief. But not only does service lead to fulfillment, but in this fulfillment, somebody can find joy. Lastly, I believe that somebody can find true joy and a genuine joy on the terms that it is something that nothing else can give. I define this joy as a God-given gift that the human mind can experience inherent enjoyment while helping others in need. For example, in Total Surrender, Mother Teresa talks about a nun who goes up to her and essentially says that she's found Christ's presence on the poor man's face while she was serving him. The nun explained, I've never felt the presence of Christ. I've never really believed in the words of him saying, I was sick and you did it to me. But his presence was there and I could see it on that man's face. Christ's presence was clear to this nun at this moment. And this act of service that she had done to this young man obviously changed her in profound ways. In my daily life, I like to attend to Crestview Baptist Church. And while I go to this church, I one time heard a sermon that was somewhat centered on my thesis and also linked to this example of the nun. Our pastor essentially ended up explaining that as you serve, God changes you. And I'd never really thought about this type of service until I started comparing the examples of my own life experiences. Because the example of the nun, as well as my own experience at the camp, made me think that this idea of life-changing service being an instrument for spiritual change is quite intriguing. If service is this path to this true joy, then I'm sure you've already asked the question, why don't you feel happy doing it? I think Mother Teresa once again answers this question quite clearly. She says that you may be exhausted with your work. You may even kill yourself. But unless your work is interwoven with love, it is useless. This is the reason why I had to change my definition of service in the middle of my oral, because love is a very important aspect when wanting to find enjoyment through it. Because if you go to an opportunity to serve and you go into it with the mindset of, I'm only here because my mother's forcing me to do this, or I'm only here because I'm getting paid, then, well, this is a somewhat self-centered mindset in that you can't necessarily enjoy it because you're only there for your own personal benefit as well as you're not there on your own account. This would be service without love, an action without meaning, with a misplaced and unloving mindset. It was the service that I was forced to do at camp. And as I learned then, if you want to enjoy service, you also have to want to do it. And this can apply to almost anything in life as well. Because if you have something that you don't want to do, then you most likely will not want to do it and enjoy it through that. In my interview with Mr. Jay Whitlow, he put up another point that can relate to this, saying that when you serve, and how important service is it can do more for you than it could do for the person you serve. Meaning that as you serve, it can make you a happier person than the person that you serve. It can make you more confident and similar to my experience. In English 3 at MCA, we read a book called Brothers Karamazov, which love in this book is quite a big theme. In this book, there's a character named Father Zosima, And Father Zosima is a monk. And one day he's counseling a woman who had been beaten and abused by her husband, who just recently passed away. The book entails of her thoughts of sin and forgiveness, possibly entailing that maybe she had not forgiven her husband before he had died. In Father Zosima's response, he says that love is such a priceless thing that you can redeem the whole world by it. Clearly, an attitude of love must accompany service. And since Dr. Fu and Mr. Whitlow both agree that service can change you, for this reason, I have to believe that you can indeed go and find this genuine joy, because it can do more for you than you could ever expected. But only if this service is a free act given in love. Service brings several results. Purpose, fulfillment, and joy are all just simple results. If service really is this true to its definition in saying that it's a lifestyle of using your time to go and help others in need through love and serving it out as if it's your purpose to do so, then I confidently believe that you can go and find this fulfillment and purpose, as well as gain a servant relationship with Christ, which I think is a great thing to have. And when this happens, and when you've noticed this, real joy, real genuine joy can be found with the right mindset of love through service. Because the fruits of loving service go deeper than just purpose and fulfillment. They can lead to a genuine joy that is like no other. I sincerely hope that I've provided some good examples of what true joy looks like, as well as encourage you to look around and see more opportunities for you to go out and serve. Because I want you to also know that service can change the people you serve, and it can change you. Thank you.
Wow. Well done.
Thank you.
Well done. Awesome. So I have lots of questions for you today. And I forgot to introduce Mr. McDuffie and Mr. Perea on the panel with you today. So I'm going to start with a couple of softball questions for you there. What are your plans for next year?
Well, I hope to continue staying here for another 2 years and go to Midland College with the scholarship there. And then I hope to continue on to Texas Tech for a possible engineering degree, either electrical engineering or mechanical.
Okay, and related to that, where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Well, I I hopefully can see myself working. Well, my dream is that I can go and work for Tesla as an electrical engineer. That's where I hope to be in 10 years.
Well, remember the little people when you work for Tesla, okay?
Yeah.
So awesome, very good. How did you settle on this particular topic? You talk about camp and stuff. What made you really think service is going to be it for your senior oral?
Well, to be honest, at the moment, this was really one of the biggest things that I was passionate about. Because like I said, I want people to feel the same things that I have, because I see people that are unhappy, and I feel like, it's commonly agreed upon that when you help somebody and you're wanting to help them, that you can become happy.
Yeah, because your thesis, you're saying that we're talking about the true path to purpose, fulfillment, and joy. Those are some big claims. Purpose, fulfillment, and joy. Is that order intentional to you? Was that
Well, for one, it helps just flow in the speech and the paper better because purpose brings fulfillment in that purpose, and joy comes from the fulfillment. So the order was for the majority just a flow, but they all do link together.
That's awesome. And so you said it's a true path. Are there false paths to purpose, fulfillment, and joy?
Well, I would say that a false path could be, everybody wants money. Greed is a human thing. So I can definitely see that, people who say my dream and, I want to be fulfilled by, being able to buy cars. At least in my situation, I had that issue for a little bit. Um, and as well as I've seen it in my own life experiences of people, having this false path of, if I get enough money, I'll be happy, which is always just a false, um, just path, I guess.
Mhm. And oh, what a car you have. Uh,
Thank you. I've worked
um,
very hard on it.
yes, you have. Um, so I have to ask, in the midst of this, when you came up with this idea for your oral, we were in a pandemic and we weren't sheltering in place or anything like that. Has your definition of service grown or been impacted by your experience of quarantine?
Well, it's made me realize that there's way more people out there that need our help than I had thought. Which I mean, that's always there that, there's tons and tons and millions of people, and there's, you know, never real end to it, but there's no reason to stop helping them. So
Mhm.
it does, I guess it hasn't really changed my definition, but really emphasized how important it actually is.
Okay. And we've had to serve without leaving the house,
Mhm.
which is a whole nother dynamic, I think. So I come from a service background. My mother was a nurse. My dad was a military guy. Is the servant's heart something that can be taught? You think? You mentioned your mom forcing you to go to camp. It made me think, hmm.
Well, in my personal experience, I was like self-taught because I mean, like I said in just the very first paragraph, I didn't expect to come out of it happy, but um sorry, repeat the question.
Oh no,
I lost it.
just can parents really help their children learn to be servants?
Oh, absolutely. Because I mean, in that situation, my mother essentially taught me how, like, I mean, my passion for the topic. Because when she brought me there, it helped me realize how important it actually is. So absolutely, I feel like, and I mean, I feel like people might be able to relate to my situation because I mean, but some people are more stubborn, and when they go to serve and they don't want to, and they're only doing it because of an outside force, then they might not ever put effort into it, and therefore not wanting to do it, and not get any of the benefits.
Okay. So getting the MCA required service hours is a good thing. Yeah.
I
Even
would argue. Hmm?
yeah. Very good. Very good. Well, I've known you since kindergarten. So I love how you've presented this topic. I have so many questions to ask you, but I am going to pass it on to Mr. McDuffie because I don't want to take all his good questions too. Good job. Uh-oh. There we go.
There we go.
Good morning, Luke. Well done. I
Thank
like
you.
your topic. And I'm like Mrs. Telshow. I've got a number of questions here. So let me just jump right in, see if I can get through some of these. Do you think God honors service outside of his will?
Explain outside of his will.
If you're serving somebody, say on your own, maybe not seeking God's counsel or will for that service, you're just going off on your own, doing whatever you think is service. Because a lot of non-Christians serve.
Oh
Does
yeah.
this honor God?
I believe that service is, no matter who does it, they're honoring God by doing so because that's what God wants from us, even if they don't, know it.
Okay. Um, do you think that fulfillment's the primary purpose of service?
Um, well, I believe that it's like I said in the last paragraph of my speech, it's a result of service. So I mean,
Okay.
I don't think it's necessarily like something that people should strive for is like, you know, I'm doing this because I want to be happier. Which I mean, I feel like you can go and do that because you're helping others by doing so. But I can't really think of anything else.
Okay. Well, so is service done strictly out of obedience to God good? I mean, for no other motivation.
Strictly for obedience to God?
Yeah.
Well, I think any type of service is good.
Okay. I think that that you said it well. That I think that service done has to be done in love. First Corinthians chapter 13, chapter 1 says that anything done without love is basically useless. It's like a clinging symbol. Okay. So are we being self-serving if we only serve others for our own fulfillment?
I guess you could say that since if you're only coming into it wanting the intent of getting happiness out of it, then I feel like you could be distracted from the main purpose of the service in saying that yeah, you might go to be happy, but the thing is that you also have to be centered on the other people and loving them and of course wanting to serve, because I feel like if somebody was going to serve just wanting to get fulfillment out of it, then they would have to, like I did, they would have to start putting effort into it and actually wanting to do so.
Okay.
Otherwise, I don't think they'll even get the fulfillment from it.
Okay. Do you think that there's a higher purpose uh, other than service?
Well, I believe our highest purpose is inside of service, because, like I said in my first point, I believe that to bring others to Christ and to bring them to heaven is our main purpose in life.
Okay.
And I feel like that is a part of our purpose.
All right.
And I believe that it's an act of service in doing so to that
So,
person.
okay. So did Christ ever say that service was our primary purpose?
I can't think of any biblical scripture that specifically put that down, but if we are going by Christ's example and a prime example, then like in Mark, where it says he came down to serve, if we were to follow his example, then I believe that we are to continually serve. And
Okay. All right. I was just trying to get at, I think God's primary purpose for us is seeking Him and loving Him with all our heart. And I think encompassed in that is service, because Christ did come down to set an example by serving us. Okay. You talked about the beggar and giving money to the beggar. I used to struggle with that, driving by the guy on the street, wanting a handout, thinking, well, I don't know what he's going to use it for. He may go buy a 6-pack of beer or whatever. So am I responsible for how that beggar uses the money that I give him?
no, because it is that beggar's, like, if their intent with the money is to use it for bad, then it's their fault. So in a sense, you can help them by giving them money, but in hindsight, I feel like it would be more helpful to give them, like, food or a place to stay, maybe
Okay.
similar
Okay.
to similar to
Go ahead.
Melissa's oral.
Okay. So I can give with the right purpose, even though the person receiving it doesn't use it for a good purpose.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay, good. Um, can we connect with Christ without serving others?
Yeah. I hope I didn't make that point because I feel like everybody can create a relationship with Christ from simply reading the scriptures.
Okay, so let's say that there's a Christian who is in solitary confinement, has no contact with other human beings. Can they still serve?
Well, I feel like in hindsight they could because I feel like this isn't in my paper anywhere, but I do believe that praying for somebody is doing a service for them. As
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what I was getting at. That yeah, intercessory prayer, I think, is a great service. Okay, I have another question, kind of like along those same lines. So, can God use a mentally handicapped person to serve?
well, in my situation, I was dealing with the people that were mentally handicapped, although they weren't actual like adults yet, but a lot of them, were just children. And I believe that they subconsciously serve because they brought joy to me while I was serving, and I would take that as an act of service.
I mean, did those handicapped people serve you in some way? Did God use them to serve you without them even knowing it? Maybe.
Yeah, I feel like they serve me by providing me the experience to um, to help them and gain the joy from that.
Okay, good. All right. Well, I got a lot more questions, but time's growing short, so I'm going to pass it to Mr. Perea.
All right. Ethan Luke Glover, lifter of weights, wearer of Crocs, grandson of a Titan, if I remember all the descriptions. Lucas Glovare, the subject of lore. There's all sorts of comments flooding in that I'm quite distracted reading them, so you'll have to enjoy them later. But you are clearly well loved and feared, so you get Machiavelli's. You are loved and feared both, which is an amazing thing. So well done. So yeah, there's a lot of comments. You'll get to see them later. But yeah, I like that you said that there's a lot of ways that you can understand what service is. It makes me think of a book that I've read during quarantine by a cannibal chef. The title is "How to Best Serve Your Fellow Man." But I don't think that that's necessarily what you were going for in your thesis, so we probably won't linger on that very long. So yeah, great words, powerful. So I want to hear just what your take is on the difference between being a servant and being a slave. Because I think in many senses, people think of them as the same thing.
Yeah, that's a great question. 'Cause, well, a servant is somebody who's wanting to go and serve. They're wanting to go out and help people in need, like in Melissa's oral for the homeless. Like she's being a servant by going and helping people in need. A slave, I feel like, is somebody who is being ongoing forced to do an action. And this sort of links back to the Merriam-Webster definition of service, where it's just an act of assistance, even though there's like nothing really behind it. So that's how I would answer that.
Mm-hmm. So it seems like somehow you're saying it's an act of will, that when you're a slave, it's being forced upon you, whereas when you're a servant, it's like a choice that you're making. Is that what I hear you saying?
I would say so, because in my personal experience, like with the camp, I had to personally make the choice of I'm stuck, might as well enjoy it.
Yeah.
As well as I lost my point. Sorry.
Okay. So it seems like, yeah, being a slave is like obeying almost against your will, and being a servant is like making a willful choice. Again, I think we're painting in broad strokes, but do you think most believers think of their relationship with God as being a slave or being a servant? Like, how do you think most people think of the way that they interact with God or what God asks of us?
Well, you have to take in, free will, because I feel like if free will didn't exist, then we would be slaves of God. But since God does allow us to have this free will, then we can make the conscious choice to go and bring others to Him, as well as bring them to heaven.
Okay. It seems like, I don't know, it almost seems like a inner posture that I hear you saying is that, like, you can, when you are a slave, it's like you're doing things that you don't really want to do. You'd rather be somewhere else. You'd rather be free to make your own choices. But when you're a servant, it's like you're kind of willfully saying, I'm putting myself, in the submission of somebody, but it's a choice that I'm making to do it. So do you think people think of God as, do you think most people obey God like against their will, against the things that they'd rather do? Or do you think they do it, I guess, like out of the goodness of their heart because they know it's the right thing to do, if that makes sense?
I would say there's, a little bit of both, because
Okay.
at least when well, I've lived in a Christian household my entire life.
Okay.
So I might not have taken it as serious as most people would. But I've definitely struggled with, feeling as if I've I don't want to go and do what God tells me to do, of course.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's a lot of people's issues today with, the fear of becoming a Christian because there's so many restrictions.
Sure.
But yeah.
Okay. Can you think of another restriction, like you just said, or a restrict? The story you gave of your mom kind of forcing you to go to camp. That was a really good one, that kind of related to service. But can you think of another restriction that was put on you at some point that you felt like it was oppressive and you really didn't want to do it, but then kind of as you look back, you go, "Yeah, that was the right thing to do, and I'm glad I did it," or "I saw this good thing that came out of it."
Specifically in an action of service, or just in any life
I'm
experience?
maybe thinking like going beyond service into some other realm, just like I didn't really want to do this. I kind of felt like a slave in the moment, but I did it anyway, kind of like your mom's camp example. And then you look back and go, that was actually, I'm really glad I did it.
Yeah, the only example that's coming to mind is on the physics trip when I was like a slave to peer pressure because I had never ridden on a roller coaster before,
Okay.
and I had like this phobia of it, and so all my friends, they peer pressured me into doing it. But afterwards, I was really happy, and I actually really enjoyed doing it. I ended up writing everything there. So.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. So I kind of want to tie a couple things together before we hand it off to the audience. But, Mr. McDuffie asked the question about, are there scriptural references to this? And it kind of seems like, when I think it was James and John who were fighting about who was going to sit at Jesus's right hand in the kingdom and who was going to be the greatest. And he said, actually the greatest among you is going to be the servant of all. And so why do you think Jesus, of all the things that he picked, like, this is the thing that makes you great? Why do you think he said service is the thing that makes you great? It wasn't prayer. It wasn't tithing. It wasn't loving thy neighbor. He said, whoever's the servant among you will be the greatest. Why do you think he picked that of all things?
Well, because using this definition of service, and as I've said throughout the paper, that there's lots of ways that ties into service, like hoping to go and save and baptize somebody, or praying for somebody. I believe that's an act of service that you can do for someone.
Okay.
So
how is being an electrical engineer at Tesla an act of service to someone? It doesn't really sound like it. It doesn't really sound like you're baptizing people into the gospel of Elon Musk. So like, how is that an act of service?
Well, are we going off of the true definition or just the Merriam-Webster definition?
I think your true definition. I hope that
Okay.
it's kind of the true definition. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would hope to make myself present that well, no. Well, I hope to like minister people my entire life. Like no matter where I am in life, I hope to go out and you know, be a minister, but also having, you know, being somewhere where I'm most useful.
Yeah. Okay. So let me ask it this way. Pick another senior. You know, we've gone through 14 other orals before now. Pick another senior you kind of probably have in your mind. This is where they're going to be 10 years from now. How do you just pick a senior and say, this is how I think they're going to be serving God 10 years from now with where they are?
Well, I would have to pick Levi Hoffman because
Okay.
he wants to be a physical trainer,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like he's definitely doing people a big service by one helping them, you know, gain health, be healthier, and two, he can also minister to the people that he's helping get healthier.
Mm-hmm. How about Cass? He wants to be a lawyer. How do you think Cass could be doing it in 10 years?
I feel like no matter where somebody is, they can always provide a good example. Like if they provide a good example, then somebody could be like, how did you become such a good person? And I know that sounds sort of like self-centered, but you know, if you always provide a good example, then I feel like you can be like when you follow Christ's example, I feel like you are pursuing this. And
Okay.
so that's where I feel like where Cass can definitely do so.
Well, how about like Leah? You know, she's going to be in the WNBA, you know, kind of windmill dunking on people. How is that going to be a service to other people?
Specifically windmill dunking or
Yeah, being a WNBA star.
um of course encouraging your teammates because and praying for your teammates. I feel like that would be one of, and once again providing an example of how Christians should be.
Yeah, I don't know. It's maybe easier to see in your friends than it is in you, but I think being an electrical engineer for Tesla is a great way that you can serve people by having integrity, by being an awesome engineer, by being somebody that your boss can count on, by when you mess up to come and say, I messed up, you know, let's get out of this pickle that I created for us. So it doesn't really matter what walk of life you find yourself in. This is something that I think we can all find ourselves in, and not just when we're at church or baptizing people. And so I think that's really profound. That's good. So, okay, back to you, Mrs. T.
All right. Rocking it. Okay, so I have one from Leah Beatty. What advice would you give to someone who finds it hard to want to serve?
Well, I would first have to ask what their religious background is, because if they're not a Christian, then it becomes more difficult. Because if I'm talking to a Christian and I can point out like the verse 1 Peter 4:10, use whatever gift you've received to go and serve and as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. Um, you know, if they're a Christian, then you can, you know, say, you know, use the Bible as encouragement. But to somebody who might not have such a religious background, I would go and say that I'd probably, what's it called? I would use some different sources, because recently I was actually watching a YouTube video about millionaires and how they were being asked questions, and there was one part in the video where all of them were like, I am happiest when I am like giving money to this poor family who needs to like get a heart transplant or something like that. Like just big medical bills. But yeah, I would use the example of just different sources and just different people and how they also say and that they enjoyed serving others.
Good, good. Let's see if we get another one up here. From Miss Gladson, how can we shift from a mindset of serving out of obligation to a mindset of serving with joy, especially when the service is labor intensive and long term?
So can we assume that it's like you just got out of college and you're stuck in a job that you don't like? Could that be?
Well, yeah, let's see. The difference of serving out of obligation and then serving with joy, especially maybe with something that's a hard job.
You get to
So,
pick whatever example you want, Luke. It's your show. So if you want it to be fresh
Yeah.
out of college, it's you, man.
Yeah, labor intensive and long term. You might be thinking of, I don't know, medical residency or something that's difficult.
Well, I feel like you can definitely receive joy by just simply helping people, like helping your coworkers, no matter where you're at. Um, and it's a good question.
Well, it leads me to a question I have for you, which really involves heart. You know, it's like when you're a little kid and your parents drag you to church. You know,
I can
but
definitely
what
relate to that.
happens? What happens? And this goes along with Miss Gladson's question. Out of obligation to a mindset of serving with joy, we've all had Sunday morning happen where that pillow was really comfortable. The birds are singing, the sun is out, and I've got to get myself up into church. I think that's kind of what shift does there have to, what has to happen for me to go from the slave to the servant mindset?
Well, I would say, I mean, this is what I've had to do over the years, and this is what my parents have convinced me to do, is to like encourage myself that like, going to church isn't a bad thing. It's a very good thing to go to church. And I do feel obligated at sometimes because I can definitely relate to this because I've even slept through some services, which of course I'm not proud of. But to switch the mindset of the slave to the servant, I would say in that specific situation of needing to go to church, I would say, well, one, read the scriptures because there's a verse, I can't remember what it specifically is, but it says go in fellowship with people.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's good. I think that's good.
Yeah, I can't come up with
I think
anything
sometimes
else.
we have to change our mindset. We have to sort of be told, we have to be reminded why we should have a good mindset for such things. Can I have another
Yeah.
question? I don't know if there's any more out there. Okay, from Caleb. If you were a Super Smash Brothers character in real life, what character would you choose to be, and what map and music would you choose to live in?
I love this question. Thank you, Caleb. Smash Bros. Character. You know what? I gotta say, I gotta go with Donkey Kong. He's always been reliable.
That is old school.
And you know what? Purely for the inside joke, I gotta go with Congo Jungle with the DK rap behind it.
Nice. And we'll take one more. Nick Telshow, who has a better cat, Grant with Murphy or me with Leonard? Choose wisely.
You can't make me pick favorites. They're both very loving cats. I've both had very, very good experiences with them. I can't pick a favorite. I know that I'm picking, the fast way out. But I gotta say they are really equally good to me. And I know, Nick, that you want me to pick Leonard, of course, but I can't. I have to say that I've enjoyed both of them equally.
But zombie apocalypse, you can only save one. So you can only bring one with you. Or you can watch them both die. So.
Oh, no.
I don't want to watch any of them die.
Zombie apocalypse, you don't get to choose.
If there's a situation where I only had to pick one specifically, just because I've spent more time with this little buddy, I'd have to go with Leonard.
Wow.
I've spent more time with him, and I guess he would give me more attention than Murphy because Murphy's a little skittish.
Okay.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to get back on track here. Why did you pick the senior assist in Greek? Why Greek?
Well, it might not have been too prevalent in my Greek grade with Adams, but I really did enjoy learning the new language. I wanted to I might not have done an amazing job at it, but I really did want people to have the same passion for it, which I know that's, it's up to the person, but I wanted to make fun and make it seem like it really is important in the future, because I used it in my oral here about the Greek word diakonesenai, which means to serve, and I used it to find out that it's continuous, because if I hadn't found that up, somebody could say it's just a single action.
Profound. That is really profound. And so I'm going to ask you a question that I think the world's view of service. You quoted Mother Teresa, and I think of Mother Teresa, I think of somebody who is just selflessly pouring out for people. I mean, she ministered to lepers. What happens? What does the world say about service? Is there a limit on how much we should serve? Does the world sometimes tell us, oh, that's enough, you don't have to do any more, good enough, take a break, take care of yourself? Is that a thing?
I mean, I feel like that's definitely prevalent when it comes to like charities, because people give like a ton of money, and people might understand how, this guy did such a big thing, he deserves a break. But other than that specific example, I haven't really seen many people say, to stop serving. And like in that example with the millionaires, I definitely feel like there's really no end to our service, because, if it brings joy, then I don't see why people would want to stop doing so.
Okay, good. Well, you're a natural servant. I have to say, you serve in ways that you don't even know. I have this mental vision of you on junior trip riding around on a scooter. Weren't we in DC? And you
Yeah.
Scooter. We had some technical difficulties with Luke's feet, and it was awesome. He was a boss on that scooter, and he didn't want to, because Luke's heart is he's just gonna, he's gonna be the weightlifter. He's the guy, and you served us, because if you recall, Luke rode the scooter and he encouraged everyone. He drove around on that thing. He talked to people. He joked with people. He said, we were walking, and it was just awesome. And so I think you're right. I think your natural disposition is very much a servant's heart, and I sure appreciate you. And you've been a great senior assistant. And I tell you, doing Greek virtually has been a challenge. It's Rosetta Stone all over again, isn't it? And anyway, I'm going to pass it on to Mr. McDuffie. Well done. Good job.
Thank you.
All right, here we are again, Luke. I just got 2 or 3 follow-up questions. Did Jesus ever teach on the importance of fulfillment?
I want to say that I've heard somewhere in the scriptures of him teaching about being fulfilled, but I can't currently.
Okay. Well, can we have joy and contentment without fulfillment?
I can definitely say so, because I mean, there's several different ways to serve, and
Okay.
The way that I served with the helping these disabled children, that's not for everybody. Not everybody would want to serve this specific way, but I feel like in that people could possibly find joy from serving it, but they maybe not feel like they're necessarily placed there. They might feel like they should go and serve some elsewhere.
Okay. All right. Last question. It says, what if I serve and sacrifice for others and am rejected and scorned by those that I serve, and I receive no fulfillment or joy? Should I continue to serve them, or is it all in vain?
That's a really good question. But I have to say, if we are to follow Christ's example, then we are to continuously serve, no matter what the circumstances are.
And I think that's Christ's example, because he came and he served selflessly, gave his life. The people he was serving scorned him and rejected him, and it didn't deter him one moment from continuing on and fulfilling the task that God gave him. Okay, thank you, Luke, very much. Well done.
Really enjoyed those questions. Thanks, Mr. McDuffie. He asked a question earlier about special needs individual, and it made me think of Justin. And I just wanted to know, this might not be the case for you, but do you have any good Justin Battenfield stories of where he is a servant to you, either did something to you or even said something to you that was just awesome? We've got plenty as a staff. I just didn't know if you had gotten to encounter any since you've been here since the beginning.
Well, I mean, I consider myself to be mainly an extrovert,
Gosh,
introvert
okay.
outside of the house.
Okay.
Yeah, no. I'm definitely an introvert outside of the house. So I don't really have any like big experiences with him, but I would say he has been such a big servant to the school while he was here.
Yeah.
You know, just giving it his all to go to serve the students, as well as he talks to the students. And while he was there, every single time I saw him, he would always say hi to me, and I was and I would always say hi back. And just that simple thing, that would put a smile on my face, because he puts his heart in what he works on. And from what I know, he's actually working with my mother now at Bynum. So that it's really awesome.
Yeah, I forget that your mom is constantly around people with special needs, and I bet she gets to see things, or now you do, because of stories that she tells or the camp that you work at, to realize, I don't know, maybe if you have your own ego stripped away a little bit, it's actually easier to love people and relate to people. And so I think we probably all could stand to gain a lot from surrounding ourselves or exposing ourselves to people like Justin, or to the least of these, and maybe that's some of what Jesus was after. One thing that I want to say that I think is a good kind of tie up from what you've done here is the three prongs of the MCA motto that you guys have heard ad nauseum: engaging minds, pursuing Christ, discovering greatness. My favorite of those three is discovering greatness, and some because of what you just described, that that greatness is found through service, through sacrifice, through making it not just about you. And suddenly when you make it not about you, it's the most fulfilled way that you can live. And so to get the thing that you really want, to get the telos that we all want, happiness and fulfillment and completion, Jesus kind of turned it all upside down and just said, if you actually are aware of other people, then that's the way that you can experience true greatness. So I think the other two ways, though, is that discovering greatness happens is in the literature that you guys get to be exposed to, or the academics you get to be exposed to. So I'm wondering if you can pick one. I have another one that I'll ask about in a moment, but one moment, we'll pick a math and science class, since you say you want to be an engineer, where you're like, this is so cool that this is the way that God set the universe up. Did you ever have one of those aha moments? If not, we'll ask from Mr. Shubin's department. But in a math or science class, did you ever have one of those?
I would have to say in astronomy, because in astronomy, it's pointed out how perfect the world is really set up and how God set it up. Mm-hmm. And it really shows that we do have an intelligent creator. Mm-hmm. Because, the first time I ever thought about it and actually saw the statistics of how the sun was placed like a couple of feet away, we would all be frozen, or a couple of feet closer, we would all be burning to death. Mm-hmm. Or if the moon was, or if the Earth's axis was, not spinning as fast, then we would all be floating away. Mm-hmm. And, I just, that's definitely the best example I can give.
Yeah. He has the precision of he's the best engineer in the cosmos, is what you just said. So that's good. And then I think the other layer of discovering greatness is realizing that you're great the way that God made you. So I've already seen it in the comments over to the side. This is an awkward thing I'm about to ask you, but what makes Luke Glover great? What would your friends say about you? Or what's great about you that you figured out in your years at MCA?
This sounds self-deprecating, but I haven't really, I haven't always been the most confident person, so I haven't really always looked at the best aspects. I'm mostly looking at the bad aspects of me and trying to fix those.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But Well, my friends would probably say what's best about me. Um, not to put words in their mouth, but I feel like I am a generally nice person. Like I don't pick on them, even though they pick on me. But I know
They
they
do,
only do it
yeah.
because I know they only do it because they love me. And Nick wrote a letter earlier that was like all picking on me, but then in it he said that they only pick on me because they love me, and so that's I mean for my laugh because everybody for some odd reason everybody loves my laugh.
Well, you're a good man, and you are in tough competition, for Nick's oral yesterday, who's the manliest of the seniors, and you didn't even make the top 3. That just means that you guys are you are a band of mighty men, is what it sounds like. So, so kudos to you. Now it's your turn. So, what kind of question do you have for us?
All right, Mrs. Telshow, I know that you absolutely love literature. You love reading books, and so I just wanted to ask you, what's a theme that you like love to find in a good book? Like when you're reading a new book, what is something that you're just like, thank goodness this theme is there?
Oh boy.
Or it
I
could
like
be
redemptive-
it could be
I
multiple.
like redemptive stories. Somebody going through a difficult time that finds redemption and forgiveness, and I'm kind of a sucker for those kinds of books. So I'm a big Brothers K fan, obviously, but yeah, I think a good story with redemption, because I feel like I'm broken most of the time, and so yeah.
All right, that's really cool because I didn't know that. Mr. McDuffie, I've had you for I think almost like always just history classes or in Bible classes. So I wanted to ask you, what is your like favorite story from history?
Gosh, that's tough. Favorite story from history. I just generally like stories about people who overcome. They have hardship or they're oppressed and they persevere and they overcome. Yeah, American slavery. Blacks persevered and overcame. The Revolutionary War. The colonists were oppressed and they overcame. And I love stories like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I love those too because one of my favorite stories from the Bible is Job. Love that story.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Faria, I don't think I've actually had you for a class at MCA.
Sad. It is. That's pretty sad to me.
And from knowing this, I want to ask you what class that you've taught, not grade, but specifically class, that you've taught that has brought you the most joy from teaching.
Oh gosh. Well, for those of you who, I don't know if there's, I guess Mr. Acuff's watching. So, I've been at the school a long time, since 2003, and it feels like the older I get, I'll just say the more unhinged I become. And so like, I've loved all the classes that I teach. Like, I think early on, I was a math major and I wanted everybody to become math majors when they graduated from MCA, which, that hasn't worked out very well for me, nor should it have. But I don't know, somehow I've learned to kind of lighten up and just try to take joy in like almost anything that comes across my teaching docket. And I think that has come out. That means I'm not as organized as Mrs. Jackson. But I've kind of started, now that I've taught here 15 years or something, I'm finally finding my own voice but I think my favorite class overall, this might not, it's hard. It's like, picking which child is my favorite. But I would say probably geometry. I like it because it has, it's sort of like this catch-all abstract class where it's not just kind of cranking problems out, which I do like, but where you just kind of get to see the big picture, and I get to be around you guys when you're older. and where you kind of get a break from doing all of the menial stuff that you and I like to do. Write it down, put a box on around it at the end. You get a little bit of literature in there by reading Flatland. So I love the age, I love the subject, and I love kind of trying to end for a lot of people math on a high note. So and of course astronomy would have been an easy one to pick but I really love that Mrs. Telshow gets to teach it, and I'm excited to teach it again someday. But I also it's made space for me to do things like teach great books. So we have one more pretty deep question that we wanted to hear. This is from Jennifer Coco. Let's see. If you could pick one person to bench press from the senior grade, who would it be and why? Also, if you could bench press a tutor, who would it be and why?
Oh dear, this is one of the most bizarre questions I think I've ever heard in my entire life.
Which is saying,
man, I'd probably do Tucker Barraclaw so I could do more than one rep.
yeah. Okay.
And out of the tutors, can it be a tutor who's left?
Sure.
Probably Mr. Sile.
Okay. Would you care to elaborate?
Well, one, I would think he's lighter, so I could also realistically bench press him. But as well as I feel like we would have fun with it because I was beforehand. I was wanting to ask him to be on my panel because I've really enjoyed him throughout the classes because I had him for Greek 1 and biology and stuff like that. But yeah, Mr. Sile.
That's good. And another thing about Mr. Sile is if you weren't able to bench press him, he'd still make you feel good about it, right? So, yeah. Well done, Luke. You've made it to the end. Proud of you. Like you said, I wish we could have encountered one another in class, but it just seems like you've had a lot of great tutors along the way and great experiences, and God's taught you a lot of things. So, yeah, Levi, you're right. He could bench press all of you with his pinky. So well done. I'll close us in prayer in just a moment, but I just want to take a chance to, as we have drawn to the end of senior orals, just want to say to all the seniors, well done. Great job making it to basically the finish line. You're not quite done, but you're basically done. And so, I've been drinking out of this mug today that I inherited at some point, that leadership matters. And I've loved seeing, it's clear that even though this isn't the way that you anticipated things drawing to a close at the end of your graduation year, you have still found ways to lead. And not only are you doing it now during the orals week, but it's clear that you have led up till this moment. Just the way that your families appreciate and admire you, the way that the underclassmen appreciate and admire you, and the way that you guys have just done a fantastic job of supporting one another, affirming one another, giving one another a hard time, building one another up. It is a beautiful thing to see. I guess it's Psalm 131, how good and perfect it is when brothers dwell together in unity. And this is what I've seen from y'all this week. So thank you for that. You guys have all had your own unique voice, and I have loved that. We get to the end of one of these orals and go, that sounded just like Jessica Barrett. That sounded just like Corey Kirk, that you guys are finding ways to be great with the gifts that God has given you. And you've done that with humility and confidence. And it's a special thing. From all across the spectrum, whether you use 4-syllable $10 words like Cass, or whether you're going to have a lawn mowing business someday like Barrett, it's all of those things. You have found ways to show that you can be great within the design that God has placed inside of each of you. And I just want to encourage you too for your flexibility and your adaptability. Again, this isn't what any of us would have chosen for you, but you've made it something really memorable and special. So thank you for that. For the underclassmen who have been watching, you've been engaged. what I've learned is when I start coming to class, I need y'all to be asking the questions, not me, because you are great question askers. You have great insights. You're profound. You have a lot of things to say and offer, and so thank you for doing that this week during orals. I hope this gives you a vision for the message that maybe God has already been placing inside of you into your story about what your senior oral can be, or what you want your senior year to be like, or what you want next year to be like. Just as you've seen some of these seniors with their vulnerabilities saying, these are the things that I've learned. If I could do it again, here's what I would do. I hope you take that advice. And families, friends, alumni who have joined in, thank you for setting the time aside to cheer these seniors on and to support them and to learn from them. I hope that you have walked away with some really great insights into how you can be great in whatever situation of life God finds you in. So thank you all for a great week. Proud of you, class of 2020. And let me close us in prayer, and then we can congratulate Luke and be done. God, thank you so much for just all the ways that you make yourself known through every face and person and every nook and cranny in the universe. Like Rich Mullins says, everywhere I go, I see you. And I pray that you will continue to give us the eyes to see that in one another, in people who are different from us, who are across the aisle from us, who are standing on a street corner, in our family members, even in our own selves, God, that we can be grateful for the glimpses of you that we see in those places. Thank you for these seniors and for the unique voices you have given each of them, and for the ways that they love one another and love you. Continue to direct their steps and equip them, and make your path known to them. We love you. Thank you for Luke and for his courage to wrap things up with a great, great topic. We pray all this in Christ's name. Amen. Well done.
Yay.
Thank
Good
you.
job.
Thank you.
Good job, Luke.
Way to go.
Thank you.